Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today. This is our second laser Q&A session. We'll be holding these monthly. They're going to take place on the first Thursday of every month. So keep a lookout and make sure that you join them and get involved. My name's Sian. I'm from the marketing team here at Trotec UK and Ireland, and I'm joined today by some of my colleagues from the sales side of the business. We've got Johnny Green, who's usually based in the Loughborough showroom. He looks after the east of England. Jamie is joining us from Bristol showroom, covering southwest of England and Wales. That's all of Wales, not just the southwest of Wales. And a bit of the Midlands, I think, too, don't you?
Oh, it goes all over, yeah. Birmingham to South Coast.
A broad area. We've got Andy over in Ireland. He's based in the Dublin showroom. And another Andy in Guildford in Surrey.
Hi.
Okay, so the format, if you didn't join last month, is that we asked people to submit questions, laser-related questions, application hints, tips and tricks that you might want. We have had about half a dozen of those in, so we're going to work our way through those questions. If anything pops up while you're listening and you want to ask us a question, we've got a live chat on the YouTube video, so just join in. I'll keep out a lookout for those questions coming in while my more knowledgeable colleagues answer the questions that have already been submitted. Okay, have I forgotten anything, guys? Should we get cracking?
Yeah.
No, let's get straight into it.
Let's get rolling.
Cool. Okay, so the first question we've got here, it comes from a customer called Richard, and he's asking, he's got a Rayjet, he loves it, that's great news, but is getting some burn marks on white card. Do we have any advice for Richard? How we can reduce those?
I think we do, yeah. I know Richard. Hi, Richard. How you doing? Good to speak to you. Yeah. So for white cards, it's important to go nice and quickly so the laser's not hanging around and leaving scorch marks. So you want to keep the laser going as quickly as you can. Also, if you don't already, you're probably best to try with the shortest possible lens to give yourself the best resolution and the shortest and the smallest spot size to give you a good cut line. So yeah, they're the main things we can do with it. But best thing you could do is drop me an email, show what results you're getting. We might be able to suggest some things based on that. So a picture tells 1,000 words, as the old adage says.
Yeah. One thing I suppose I would note on that as well is if you're looking for something which might prove to give you a better result, the Speedies also have the advancement of having a telescope after the laser source, so the spot size can be a little bit smaller than on the Rayjet, so you might be able to get a better result with a Speedy, certainly a Speedy 100 over a Rayjet. So that's one thing to maybe Johnny could do a test for you on the Rayjet and on the Speedy, and see what the differences are.
Yeah,
something I've come up with as well is that not all card is the same, and especially not all white card is the same. So getting a really decent, good paper or card stock, something like Color Plan, other papers are available, but that's one that I know a lot of my customers that are processing a lot of paper use. Yeah, it's just down to the composition of the core of the material, and it's nice and clean and high quality stuff all the way through it.
Yeah, I'll just add there, Trotec do laser paper, but we don't stock white. At least here in the UK, we don't stock the white. So I don't know if it's available elsewhere, but that's why Andy has not mentioned Trotec's own brand of laser paper.
Yeah, white. Yeah. I've noticed generally the kind of satiny finish cards generally get a better result. The plain sort of matte white card can often leave quite a carbony edge on it, and to be honest, that's inherent in the material. You're never going to be able to dial that out with settings. You're always going to have that kind of charred, kind of brownish kind of edge on it. It's just what the material is going to do when you cut it with the laser. So yeah, another thing to look at, yeah, as Andy says, look at maybe a slightly different material might give you a much better result.
I'm going to throw one more thing into the melting pot, I think, just before we close on this one, and that's thinking about extraction. So we touched on this a lot during our previous Q&A session, and you really want good flow through the machine to take away the particulate as quickly as possible. So I don't know if you're using a vent system or a filter system, but if you can speed up the turbine speed and get more air flowing through the laser, then that might make a difference for you as well.
We've got a question actually about this telescope that you mentioned. I don't know if you guys can see that in the live chat, but Chris Wright's asking, can you elaborate on this telescope? Is it something that can be used easily, or is it something that must be bought with the laser? He's currently using a Speedy 300.
The Speedy 300 has the telescope, so all the Speedy range have this. It's basically, if you imagine after the laser source, you've got this telescope, then it goes around the mirrors, and what the telescope does is it expands the beam and straightens it, so you effectively get more of the laser's power delivered to the lens, and then therefore your material. So you get, generally on the Speedies, we get, because of this telescope, we've got sort of more bang for your buck, as it were. So like, our 80 watts are delivering as much of that 80 watts as you can get at the material, but also it can mean that your spot size is a little bit sharper than if you don't have that. So it's again one of those things to test on certain materials.
Yeah, it's just to clarify, it's not an accessory that you can purchase for it. It's an optical component intrinsic to the machine. So as my colleague Andy says, it's there to collimate the beam, and it's due to the design of the machine itself. It's part of the beam delivery mechanism of it. It's just a feature that the Rayjet doesn't have that the Speedies do.
Yeah, I think some people know it as a collimator rather than
they do, yeah.
a telescope. Yeah, so two names.
Okay, but just to go back to Richard's question, because he's using the Rayjet, so there are things he can do with the Rayjet that could result in better card cutting.
Yeah, absolutely, and we're here to help. So Richard, if you're watching, hopefully you are, drop me an email. We'll get you sorted out.
Lovely.
Just before we go on that one, just quickly, I'd add into that is just the cleanliness of the area. Obviously, it shows up a lot more on white card than it does on coloured card. So making sure your honeycomb table is not being used for things like wood and things like that, where you're getting a lot of residue sat around, because we're just reheating that, and it shows up a lot more on white card than it does on coloured card. So just little things just to make sure your cleanliness of the area, your lens and things like that as well make a big difference.
Yeah, good point, Jamie.
Thank you, Jamie. Thanks, guys. Okay, shall we move on to the next question? Hope that's helped Richard. This one, I think we know that this is one of Jamie's customers, Seb, who has some roller parts, and he's not sure what they do.
Yeah. Seb, nice to hear from you. It's the only parts we can think of from this question is going to be from the rotary attachment. So our standard rotary attachment comes with cones and the rollers. So you can take the cones off, put rollers on for a lot bigger items that obviously aren't going to fit in the cones. So if it's not, if you want to send us a picture again, you can drop me an email with a picture of it. We can have a look at it properly for you, or give us a call and we can arrange to come down and have a look for you, see what it is. But I'd imagine it's just the roller parts that can fit onto a rotary attachment.
Great.
Yeah, can I just drop something in there? It's the rotary attachments that we supply, we call them a combi. So they have cones, which most people use for most jobs, but also a set of rollers. So you've got the option of using the best one for the product.
Yeah. Just to build on Jamie's comment a little bit, yes, the rollers are very good for the bigger components that won't fit in the cones. They're also good for really small components, ones with a very short diameter, like shot glasses, because you could just drop them straight on. And in the cones, it might be just sat in the cone a bit too much for the laser to get down and reach. So they're also really good for the smaller items too. So having both just gives you flexibility to use it for all sorts of things. That's on the assumption that we're talking about the not like the wheels off the trolley or something like that.
Could be a mystery, but hopefully we'll be able to.
I think it's worth mentioning something as well, that we do supply industrial type chucks that can fit onto our rotary attachments as well. So that can often be really useful for smaller tube type applications, or rings if you had a flex machine, might be able to engrave on the outside of it. So there are options. So what I'd say is, I want to put out there is that if anybody's got any questions about any of our kit, get in touch with your local showroom and we will give you the best advice we can.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you.
Window cleaner's just turned up. So
is that what At least you know we're live. It's real.
Real problem.
And we're human. Okay, thank you. We've got another question here. This is from Maria. I actually think Maria's based over in the States, but she's just purchased a small laser and is about to get started. I don't think it's a Trotec, but do we have any advice for anybody out there who's just about to get started with their lasers, maybe starting a new business?
Who wants to go first? I don't mind going first. We got loads of advice, all over the website. So you can log on to troteclaser.com and you can look up application tips and find lots of videos as well. I don't know if any of my colleagues want to add to that.
Yeah, YouTube's always a good place to start for applications, but also, as Andy said, on the website, we do actually have, now I'm not sure if I guess it's the same in America, certainly in the UK we do, applications where you can download files, so they give you kind of like a how-to of how to make these and the different materials. Now, it won't be relevant necessarily for your machine in terms of the settings and maybe the size, but it's certainly something you can have a look at to get an idea.
Yeah, lots of ideas on the Trotec website, and I know that our colleagues in the States, the US office, are running webinars of their own. They've certainly done some in the past. We've got one that we're about to launch soon and start promoting, a photographic engraving webinar that's taking place later this month. Trotec Canada have a huge host of videos and ideas on their YouTube channels. And the other thing is maybe looking at sites like Pinterest and looking at laser cut or laser engraved just to see what other people have done, because there's some really smart stuff. And obviously with the laser you can do so many different things that you probably want to start specializing in something and picking something to perfect. But yeah, there's loads of stuff out there on the Trotec site that can help you, I think.
Yeah, I'll just jump in there, John, on that. It's great, the lasers, you have applications, like we said there's hundreds and hundreds of them. But for someone who's starting out very new, I've always given the advice just to pick 2 or 3 things to get yourself going. Get lots of questions and application help from customers who just want to go out and do everything, and they never perfect the one thing they want to do, and they find themselves struggling, especially as a new start business, that you can go out and try and do everything you want and never perfect anything. And I think really you want to get down to 1 or 2 things, get them out online, get them out selling, and then really perfect your process as you go, and then really explore into further applications. It's very easy for you to kind of take on a lot of advice early doors, forget little bits of everything, and never really perfect anything. So yeah, there's lots and lots of online content, lots and lots of things you can do with lasers, but sometimes it's worth just scaling it back and getting a few things out there and get yourself going. Yeah, we've got
a comment from Chris, who's a question we answered earlier, and at first I thought he was referring to one of us swearing, because he says get a swear jar, but I think his advice is for Maria just starting out. I guess there'll be a lot of trial and error in the early days of getting a laser, so maybe some patience is required.
Yeah. No, that's right.
Absolutely.
I think Jamie's absolutely right. I mean, it's so easy. You've got a new machine, you want it to do all these kind of things, but really concentrate on your bread and butter. What's the machine going to be doing for the first few months? Just as you're growing your business, you're getting used to the machine. Yeah, just specialize in a couple of items, get them absolutely perfect, and by the time they're flying out the door, then you can start looking at more complicated things, different materials, different designs, different techniques, and we're always here to help, of course. So our colleagues all around the world, we're here to assist. Whatever ideas you have, come pick our brains. We're here to share our knowledge with you.
Can I pop in there as well? So I'll just go out on the end that sometimes we don't see people right at the beginning of their journey, and they purchase a competitive piece of equipment, maybe some sort of Chinese component machine. Once you've got your machine, once you've got your business up and running, don't feel that you have to be constrained by it as your business grows. So, stepping up to something like a Speedy will give you an awful lot more productivity, probably 5 or 10 times productivity in the future. Obviously, you might not need that right at the beginning when you're starting your business, But as it comes along and opportunities present themselves, then that's a consideration.
I'd also say that, maybe contacting the local Trotec office, because they'll have application ideas and things like that, and also materials. So they might have some information about the materials that they sell and how they work, and maybe how they work for your local area. Because obviously, a lot of businesses and these startups and things might draw on local, local things and local events, local, places of interest and things like that. So I'd say, contact your local Trotec office, even if it's not a Trotec you're buying, because they might be able to offer you something else.
Yeah, I'm going to throw one last thing in the pot from myself, and that is just that we are here to help all laser customers. Yeah, so if you've got an issue or want to ask a question about processing some of our materials, doesn't have to have our laser as well. We will give you some help and some guidance on that. Yeah, so we've all got a lot of experience. I guess if we added up how much experience we've got in the UK here, it'll amount to more than 100 years. Yeah, I'm quite old, so maybe several hundred years. But we're here to help, and all our colleagues around the world.
We are. Okay, and just one last piece of advice from Anne-Marie. She says, be ready to throw away lots of materials at first. Trial and error, as I said. Okay, we'll move on to the next question, and that is about incremental data, sort of serial numbers and things like that. Do you have any advice on the best way to process parts where you're marking or engraving numbers or numbers that go up in increments? I don't know why I had to repeat myself. Sorry. Incrementally. Exactly.
Yeah, well, I think that feature is in Illustrator. I'm not completely au fait with Illustrator, that function in Illustrator, but you can use variable data or increment. I guess the YouTube videos would be the first port of call, and how to do it there. Certainly in other softwares like CorelDRAW and EngraveLab do it very easily as well. So maybe somebody else has got an idea of or more experience on that than I have. But it's certainly something you should be able to do in these softwares fairly simply.
I got a few customers that do it, and they do use and they do like the EngraveLab solution. The biggest reason for that is that it can generate and automatically serialize the numbers for you, whereas with Illustrator or CorelDRAW and pulling those numbers into a mail merge, someone perhaps has got to type all of those into a spreadsheet first of all. So I guess it comes down to how automated do you want it to be? Do you want to manually input the data and then pull that into your design work in Illustrator? Or do you want a software package that you can just tell it where to start, how many numbers or letters to increment by, and it'll handle that whole process for you?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of EngraveLab as a solution for this. Obviously, you can do all your design work in Illustrator beforehand, but the actual variable text fields, you can pull them in from any kind of files, like a text file or a spreadsheet, and just populate them into little badges as you go. And if you've got more data than will fit on one page, it will send it through to job control as several separate job pages. So it'll just process the whole job for you, just drop them in one after the other. So very, very easy to do. It's just you just got to put a bit of effort into the software side of things first. But let us know if there's anything else we can help with on that. We're here to help. EngraveLab, great solution for it, but you can do it in Illustrator if you want.
Yeah, get in touch with us.
Okay, thank you. We've got a question that's come in, and I'm not sure about whether we'll have an answer for it or not, but Stephen's asking about something he's seen on Trotec USA for cleaning TroLase materials with a Hexane Cleaner.
Yeah, it's a solvent cleaner, yeah.
He's wondering if there's anywhere in the UK that sells it. I don't think we sell it direct.
No, I think I'd go for that and buy it from a supplier or a stockist. So we don't stock it, but we do use it. Certainly I've got some in the showroom here. But generally I just Google and find the best deal and get a litre of it.
I'm sure we can find somewhere for you.
yeah, get in touch with your local office and we can find out if you can't find it yourself. Something I learned is that you need to perhaps just take a little bit of care and wear a little bit of PPE on your hands, because it's more aggressive than isopropylene, which will dry your skin out as well. But yeah, unless you want rock hard cuticles, put a set of gloves on. I'm from London and the South East, so I'm allowed to say that.
You have a manicure regularly, don't you, Andy?
Absolutely.
Not recently, though.
I had a haircut recently. That was the first one.
Okay. There's no more questions in the live chat at the moment, so I'll pop back over to the questions that have been submitted previously. We're getting near to the end, though, so if anyone does have any questions, now's the time to put them in the live chat, and we'll come back to it. So when we run out of questions, we'll leave the webinar and turn it off. So put your questions in the live chat now. This one could be quite a long topic, actually. I don't know. How much does it cost to run a laser?
Oh wow, I'll stick my hand up for that one then, because I've just been through this exercise. Interesting question. One thing, how much does it cost to run it? An hour or a day. But if you compile a few of the ongoing costs, so a service and a laser tube replacement in a few years' time, either on a glass or a RF machine, I think that's a more sensible way to do it. I mean, there are different answers to that question for every size machine, but if we thought about a mid-size machine like a Speedy 300, let's say, at around about 80 watts, I reckon that it's about £2 an hour to run it, taking into account your servicing and your consumables running forward. And it's a little bit more expensive for a glass tube machine, probably about £3 an hour, because you're going to replace that tube a lot more often, and the electricity that they use is greater. You've got a chiller involved as well, whereas we use an air-cooled laser tube. But there we go. I hope that answers that question. It's not going to cost you much to run a filter or a vent kit. Just to finish up, I worked it out about £1 an hour for a filter, allowing for buying a spare filter annually, and much less for a vent, because you don't have that cost moving forward. About 25 pence an hour I worked out.
I suppose that's it.
Yeah. And I've got spreadsheet blindness from that exercise.
What you probably, it depends on the application, but I would say as well is that the cost difference of £2 an hour. Sorry, is it £2 an hour?
Yeah.
Andy? £2 an hour to £3 an hour. You've also got what your profit potential is. So with a Speedy, if you're engraving, that could be Speedy 300 if you're engraving with a ceramic RF laser tube compared to a glass DC tube. You're talking 7-8 times faster processing speed, realistically. So your profit potential is a lot greater in that time as well, and it costs you a bit less. So yeah, it's not just about how much it costs; it's how much money you can make.
Yeah, another way of looking at that is obviously the question: how much did it cost to run a laser? How much did it cost to run it compared to what? Obviously, mechanical machines not only going to be using power, you're going to be needing to replace tips and tooling, that kind of thing. You're going to have a lot more downtime, a lot more time changing tooling. All these things add up. So once you factor it all in, laser becomes very, very efficient over the lifetime of it.
Yeah, cleaning, that kind of thing, as
yeah,
I think
absolutely.
Jamie, you mentioned earlier. Okay, do you think we're done on that topic, or anything else anyone wants to add?
Well, I think if people want more detail, then we can provide it. And just got to give us.
We can talk for hours if you want us to. So it's probably not
I know.
Not the time for it.
Where you want to be.
Okay, thank you. We have a question, and I don't remember who it's from. Sorry. This person would like to cut 5mm acrylic. What's the best power to be able to do this? I'm guessing I'm guessing laser source would make a difference to this as well if you were using DC versus ceramic.
Yes, it would. I mean, usually as much as you can. The more power, the better. Generally, certainly with the ceramic lasers, you can, effectively, if you had 5mm acrylic, if you had an 80 watt compared to a 120 watt machine, the 120 watt machine would be 50% faster for roughly the same result. So it depends on if you want speed or if you want the edge finish. Now, obviously, speed on a laser would be better than a mechanical engraving or a routing edge anyway. So yeah, but typically we'd sort of say, I don't know whether the other guys agree, but usually it's about 10 watts per millimeter for a reasonable standard at a reasonable speed as a good rule of thumb, but obviously more is better. Yeah,
I agree 100%. And I term that as being that rule, 10 watts per millimeter, giving you a commercial cutting rate. And if I'm asked what that means, it's been able to cut something for another person in the trade and make money doing it. Yeah. So obviously a profit line is usually lower business to business than it is business to consumer.
I read, I was actually working on a new, I don't know if I'm allowed to say, but I've started now. So a new ebook. We're working on some new content, and it's actually quite interesting. But this point actually came up weirdly today, and it said something about you could potentially cut with a lesser power, but it would just be like a separation cut. So it wouldn't be quality enough that you would want to sort of make a product using it. But if you were just wanting to part with two pieces of material, then maybe slightly less power is doable. Is that, am I on the wrong tangent?
Yeah, you're on the right path.
No,
definitely. Go on, Johnny, jump in.
No, I wouldn't disagree. No,
I won't give up the day job. Don't worry.
No, that's definitely true. But I think for 5 millimeters, maybe not the biggest factor really. I mean, 5 millimeters isn't the thickest. Even 30 watts is going to go through it with absolutely no trouble. It's just the quality of result that you might end up with and the speed of it. As Andy says, you're 100% right, Andy. I'm bringing that one back. So it's going to be commercially viable as an enterprise. Yeah, the rule of thumb is 10 watts for every millimeter of material.
It's a safety factor as well, I think. So if you the slower you've got to run a laser to go through the material, the longer it's going to take, and the more chance there is of you running into some sort of difficulty there. So 10 watts per millimeter is a good rule of thumb, but more is better.
I suppose the one thing on that, Andy, as well, is if you've got a lower powered laser trying to cut a thicker bit of acrylic or any material really, because the laser will go slower and it'll linger on that area for longer, there is more chance of igniting the fumes. So you want to have a decent extraction system. So again, there's the thing going back to, I think, the first question about the paper. You don't want to go too slowly that you're kind of lingering in a certain point for too long. Certainly on the thicker stuff, like when you get up to 10 mil.
It's amazing how these things come around in circles, isn't it? Sorry, Johnny.
That's right.
The last session we did, we spoke in quite a detail about extraction and how important it is, and how it's often overlooked by some other players in the industry. It is really important, and not only going to better your finish, but you're making the process safer as well. Pay attention to it.
Yeah, it's like the fundamentals of laser processing, isn't it?
Yeah, all I was going to do is beat that dead horse some more myself, really. More extraction. There's no such thing as too much extraction. It's always going to be safer, not only the process, but also you don't want to breathe in those particles yourself, obviously. So the more extraction you can muster, the better the results you're going to get.
Lovely, thank you. Thanks for that.
Just quickly, sorry, Sean.
All right.
You mentioned it very quickly. The laser source as well. So with ourselves, with our Speedy range, we're always talking about the RF tubes and ceramic core tubes, which it's great to have more power, and the more power we have, the better all the way through is what we say. But that does affect what source you have. So if you went down to the glass laser route, it's not always the case, because you haven't got the control at the lower end of that power level of a glass laser tube. Therefore, more power is not always the best. So still the same rule of thumb with the was going to say 10 mil then for Ross as well. 10 watts per millimeter, which will work. So if you've got a glass tube, you'll probably get better results with a 50 watt glass tube on a 5 mil acrylic than necessarily you might do at 120 watt. Whereas with the ceramical and the RF tubes, we have that control level over the tubes themselves that we can output a lot better at the lower end level. So we always talk about more power being better, especially with the ceramical tubes. So always worth taking into account if you are using glass laser sources, that may be the case, maybe slightly different to what we're trying to say here.
And the other thing to note, of course, on the ceramic tube is you can pulse it a lot more quickly. So whereas on a glass tube, if you look at the results on acrylic, you're going to get quite a notchy edge most of the time. But when you're working with a ceramic laser, you can have a very, very smooth finish because it's just pulsing very, very quickly. I don't know if anyone can see that kind of edge on there, nice and shiny on it. So better prop. But yeah, so ceramic laser is much, much better for getting that nice, smooth, glassy finish on the edge too.
Okay, I am now going to move us along to the next question. Thank you, everybody. That's such a simple question that we've I think hopefully we've answered that thoroughly. So we do have a question. I think actually there's probably a couple of points to be made about this. This is from Chris again from the live chat, asking about the thickest material on the Speedy 300. So again, it will depend on power. But the second part of the question is, for example, could I cut 3mm stainless steel? I mean, I think I know the answer to that is no, but I will let somebody explain why and maybe go into a bit more detail on that one.
Go on, Johnny, you do a good one on this.
Shall I do it? Okay. Right. Okay. So we're not going to be able to cut stainless. Main reason being that with most Speedy 300s being a CO2 laser, it's the wrong wavelength of light to do it. So almost all of that energy is just going to bounce off metals without having any impact into them. So it's entirely the wrong wavelength of light for working with metals. To work with metals, you really need a fiber laser, although fiber lasers that we're going to be supplying are mainly for engraving, so we're still going to be able to cut anything like 3mm with them. Generally, what can we cut as general with the Speedy 300 depends entirely on the material. Depends on the density of it, the nature of it, how well it absorbs the energy from the laser. So most Speedy 300s are 80 or 120 watts. So typically 80 watt machine, we have to cut say 10 mil of acrylic, 10-12 mils. Same with most woods. Packing foam, maybe double that because it's not very dense and there's a lot of air there. So yeah, it really just depends on the material we're working with.
Yeah, we don't know what power. If Chris has got a Speedy 300, he hasn't listed what power it is, so that's hard for us to give a estimate on for him.
But if you work on, as we did with the rule of thumb there, you're working at 10 watts per millimeter. Keep working on that. It'll give you a good guideline. Again, as we said earlier, the power, you might be able to cut through thicker, but it really comes down to what you're looking to do. If you're looking just to hack through a bit of acrylic, 10 mil, 12 mil acrylic, you'll get through it, but you might not get the results you're looking for. So really need to understand what results you're looking for, and that's again where we're here. Give your area rep a call, just discuss it with him, see what results you're looking for. He can explain really what you need to be doing.
Yeah, I had a quick look on the CRM or the database, but it's we got quite a few Chris Wrights, so I can't hazard a guess. You'll have to get in touch with Chris.
One thing as well, which goes back to the, I think, 5 mil acrylic question was is lenses as well, because different lenses are maybe more suitable for different thicknesses. So like a 1.5 inch lens wouldn't really be suitable for cutting anything thicker than, I don't know, maybe a millimeter, depending on what it is. Whereas, the 2.5 inch lens would be something we'd use for cutting 10 mil acrylic, for example. It doesn't mean that like a 2 inch lens wouldn't do that, but you might get a better result with a 2.5 inch lens. So again, there's a few other things to consider in terms of when you come to cutting thicker materials.
Okay, thank you. Hopefully that helps Chris out. And just a quick note to Stephen, who said he did try to get some help from us on the Hexane Cleaner. Just get in touch with your local area manager or drop us an email to the inquiries email address, and we'll have a look out, see if we can help you with that. But Stephen has another question here about our white and black TroLase. He's getting a greenish burn mark on the edge of the material. could anyone have any thoughts about why that might be happening, or have we ever had that issue on our white on black TroLase?
No, is he using what laser is he using?
Not sure.
Okay, usually marking on the edge would be too much power. In my experience anyway on the TroLase, so too much power, not enough extraction, or a dirty cutting table. Those are like the first 3 ones I would look at.
Okay.
Yeah, so just general tips on working with TroLase may or may not benefit you, but I will always try and work from the bottom of the workpiece towards the back of the machine, just so we're not dragging all our dust over where we just extracted. We're pushing it all towards the extraction. So start from the bottom of the workpiece and work up, and maybe just knock it ever so slightly out of focus, maybe 1.5 millimeters, just to try and blend it in so you don't see the lines of every pass of the laser too.
I don't know if Stephen's using a Trotec, but if you are, get in touch with your local area manager and we'll try and get the settings right. Stephen says
we'll do it anyway. I mean, we're here to help no matter what machine.
We may not know the answer, but yeah, we'll try and help. But
I've had a quick look. I can't see it's one of our machines, so not too sure.
Not having the same problem with other TroLase colours, it's just this one. So I think.
I wonder if it's a glass tube machine, is it?
I don't know. Stephen maybe can let us know. I think the best thing is if you get in touch with us, Stephen, and we'll try and get one from it.
Yeah, if you can send us some pictures, that'd be ideal. Then we can have a good look at it, and there's going to be a lot of clues in there. We can help diagnose it and give you some solutions.
Sure. And Anne-Marie, who is joining us from Canada, I think I noticed earlier on in the chat. Anne-Marie's asking for hints and advice about photo engraving. First thing I'll say is that we do have a webinar coming up. It is going to be hosted by us in the UK, but you're more than welcome to register for it. Just keep an eye out on our social media pages because we'll be posting about that in the next couple of days. So that might help you. But does anybody have any advice today about how to get better results with photographic engraving on wood?
Okay, yeah. First and foremost, don't engrave your pets. They don't like it. But engraving photos onto solid wood. Basically, you want to start with a really vivid photo where you can see the subject of it really clearly against the background, because we're not going to be engraving different colors. It's just going to be variation in tone. So whatever creature you're trying to engrave a picture of, it's just got to stand out really clearly against the background. So if you've got like a white dog in the snow, absolutely no chance. It's going to look terrible every time. The other thing to bear in mind is solid woods. There's often a lot of features in there, like the grain and knots and things like that. And your picture's got to try and stand out from that. So often it's better to use some softer woods, your balsa, plywoods and things like that, where they're a lot more flat and neutral and featureless, and then your image can jump out a lot better from them.
Is there any advice for the photo quality required? I guess the higher res, the better.
Yeah. Particularly if you've got a low res image and then you're trying to stretch it out to fit on a bigger panel. You also want to go the opposite way, really. So start off with a good resolution and shrink it down. Just thinking when I've been doing things in the showroom, showing people how to do this application, normally processing at about 333 DPI, perhaps more than the higher resolutions. I think you can get a little bit more. Sounds wrong, but you get a little bit more detail out of it then, rather than clustering all of those, all of the light and dark bits together.
Well, sometimes with the wood, the laser pulse, it creates this thing called a dot gain. So basically, it expands in the wood because the burn kind of expands a little bit. So going with too much DPI, as Andy said, can sort of drown it out a bit. So maybe reducing that to the 333 DPI can give a better result in certain woods.
I'm sure there's in our on our website there's a tutorial.
There is
on the engraving as well.
There is, and on Trotec USA's YouTube channel they have a webinar. I can't remember when they did the webinar, but it's still on their YouTube channel, so you could watch that back.
Didn't he?
Pardon?
I think it was Laser Dave, one of Laser Dave's YouTube.
It might have been, yeah. So, and like I say, we're running a photo engraving webinar in a couple of weeks' time too. It sounds as though it's a bit of trial and error. So if you have the luxury of having lots of wood to practice on, it probably can help refine the different settings and.
Yeah,
yeah, like the boys said,
oh, sorry, Jamie, go on.
Sorry, I was going to say, it's like the boys said, wood's probably one of the harder ones to do because it really comes into that level of
Next
detail.
to glass.
So what's the best? What would you say is
I've had some great results on TroLase. So white on black or black on white TroLase really comes out like a black and white photo.
Really?
I think I've got one here. Hang on.
After
that's interesting because you'd think with it being quite a wow.
Yeah, it really stands out on TroLase.
So that's black and white TroLase.
Good stuff.
What was it? Black and white on black. That was it.
It does look like a print, doesn't it?
Yeah, you can get good quality out of a laser, definitely.
And you said glass is quite difficult for photographs as well.
Because it's hard to get contrast on it. So when you engrave glass, it just looks the same colour. It's hard to get
a grayscale image. It's just literally black or white.
Yeah.
Having a bit of software which you can use to adjust the photo is useful. So Anne-Marie doesn't say what she might be using, but if you had something like Photoshop or Coral Photo Paint, or actually in Coral Draw, you can affect the dark and the light contrast. And you want an image that's got lots of contrast in it, and potentially make the image stand out by removing the background if you've got that feature in your software as well. That can often really help.
Yeah, I find if it's a color photo as well, if you can, is to turn it into a grayscale in the software, because then you can have a better idea of the contrasts in it. So then you've got a better idea of what it might turn out like on the when it's laser engraved.
Yeah, we're fortunate with the Trotec machines as well. Sorry, Johnny, that you can see the image on the job control screen. So once you processed it, we're able to view it before you engrave it, and at that point you're viewing the laser output rather than the photo, and you can start to correlate the two things together. And as you gain a bit of experience, you know what it is that you're trying to achieve on the software side of things to get the right output on the material.
I noticed Anne-Marie's mentioned she uses Coral Paint. I know in Coral Draw, and I believe in Coral Paint is a function, I think it's called tone curve, where you can say you can optimize the brightness so you get the contrast right for engraving. Obviously we can explain in more detail if you like, but yeah, you can adjust the tone of it, because you want to pick out the detail without just hammering it all in, just turn it into a big splodge when you're trying to engrave too much detail. So it's always a bit of a balancing act with photos, but you do get the hang of it. And as Sean says, we've got a webinar all about it soon, so please have a look at that.
It sounds like Anne-Marie's tried quite a lot of different things, so maybe trying the softer woods would be an idea. What about the laminated woods? Would they make any difference, or would they not be suitable for this application? We do some laminated wood sheets, don't we? I think I've when I was doing my original training, when I first started at Trotec, I engraved a photograph onto one of those, I'm sure.
They can be quite good, but it's back to the issue of just having the grain and the wood detail. Right. And obviously it's part of the beauty of the material, but it can be difficult to see detail over the top of. So it's always a bit of a challenge when you've got things like the laminates, because we sell it with the grain in it is part of the look people want, but seeing the photo past that can be a challenge unless it's a really vivid photo.
Yeah, okay. You could just feature it as part of the picture, like a nice beauty spot or something like that.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Okay. I don't think we have any more questions in the live chat. I'm just having a quick multitasking, having a quick sift through. It looks like we've got to... So Stephen said he's got a question about Trotec machines working with registration marks, but there's no further detail. If you're really quick, Stephen, we can answer that one.
Well, the answer is yes, they do.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, the vision system.
So yes, he's saying, can you get Trotec machines to use registration marks to be able to precisely cut printed acrylic instead of lining up by eye? Yes, there is an
100%.
option.
Yeah.
Yes, we can. Yeah, so there is a camera module available on the Speedy 300 and up, and what that will do, it will read registration marks that have been printed onto the material and compare that against what it thinks the position is on the drawing and where the cut line should be, so it can compensate for position and skew and scaling and all sorts of things. And it's very, very accurate indeed. So yeah, long and short answer, yes, we can.
Yeah, job control vision.
Yeah, and that can be, if you don't have it on a one of your Speedy, if you've got a Speedy laser and you don't have it, it can be retrofit as well.
Yeah.
Good to know. Lovely. In that case, we're just over the 45-minute mark, and I don't see any more questions in the live chat. We will be holding these sessions every month, the first Thursday of every month. There'll be a form on our website for you to register your questions. If you're not already following us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, have I missed any? All of those social media channels, we're there, and that's how you can find out about our upcoming webinars. Please join us again.
I've got time for a very, very quick announcement.
An announcement?
Yeah. If anyone out there just can't get enough of that Trotec UK magic, our good friend of this parish, Trevor Stevenson, and one of his customers is going to be on the Trotec Canada's webinar tomorrow afternoon. So please have a look at that.
Yeah, good shout, Johnny. We've got Lewis Miles from Formed, who has one of our large format machines. He's joining Lev and our Canadian colleagues on their weekly jam session tomorrow afternoon, along with Trevor, who's one of our team. So yes, if you're available to join that, it will be on live stream from our YouTube channel and also Canada's. Thank you for reminding me of that one.
Yeah, I really want that.
Great. Well, it's lovely to be sat in a room on my own, not seeing all these faces, but thanks for everybody for joining us virtually. It's been a really lovely session, and we hope you'll join again. We're here to answer your questions whenever you need them. Get in touch.
Come
Anyone
and get
else?
some love.
Yeah.
Thank you, tuning in.
Thank you, everybody. We're going to switch off now. Take care.
Bye.
Thanks, bye.